So, Snow White is the latest live action Disney remake. Oh boy, we're back at it again. And this one definitely had some controversy behind it because of Rachel Zegler's casting as Snow White, but also her behavior when marketing this movie, which definitely tarnished whatever hype that this movie had. But of course, there's still some die-hard Disney fans who think Disney does no wrong and were excited for this movie. I was not one of them because I damn near don't like a single one of these live action remakes. The only exception is the Jungle Book. That I thought was okay. But yeah, Snow White. Yeah, it's a matter of time until they got to this. I don't need to explain the plot because you all know what Snow White is. It's directed by Mark Webb, stars Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. So, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on this movie. It's bad. Yes. No surprise here. It's a bad movie. But is it the worst of the Disney live action remakes that a lot of people, including myself, have been fearing? No. It's not the worst. Pinocchio still holds that title, and The Lion King is a close goddamn second. But this is just a generic kind of bad. It's one of those movies where you're like, God damn, they're doing nothing really new or interesting here. I mean, they do make some changes, but it doesn't make the movie better. It doesn't make the movie feel fresh. Nothing. I do have some positives here. Rachel Zegler, while she doesn't embody Snow White, she does the best she can with the material she's given. And she's good at singing. I mean, she already proved that in a much better film called West Side Story, that Steven Spielberg remake that came out a few years back. But yeah, for the material that she's given, which is just boring generic trash, she does her best. And while the dwarves are nightmare fuel, some of them are standouts. Some of them are actually quite fun to watch. And some of the effects are decent. Like when it comes to like the CGI animals, they look fine. And that's where my positives end. Let's get into all the negatives. Like I've mentioned, this movie does nothing new, and the stuff that it tries to change just adds more to how generic this movie is. What else? Gal Gadot. Let's get the elephant out of the room here. A lot of people thought that Rachel Zegler would have been the worst part of this movie. That's really because of her absolutely retarded behavior that she's exhibited when marketing this movie. Gal Gadot is the worst performance in this movie. She gives the worst. She is terrible in this movie. I wouldn't have minded if she tried a little harder to chew the scenery up, but no. Her performance I thought was lackluster and bland, and god damn, she was boring to watch. I mean, she's lovely to look at, that's for sure. Very lovely to look at. Gal Gadot is one of the hottest actresses in the industry today. But fuck, man, she gives a dull, boring performance, and literally any other actress could have given the exact same performance. Wow, lazy. They should have just gotten Charlize Theron back for this movie. You know, like she played the evil queen in Snow White and the Huntsman, but imagine if they brought her here into this movie. She would have put a lot more soul and life into this movie than what Gal Gadot did. And the songs in this movie are a major mixed bag. Like, when it comes to like the obligatory songs that they put in here because it's a remake, those songs are done fine, but when they add new musical numbers, because there's a lot of new ones in here, this one's way more of a musical than what the original was. The new songs are absolute trash. Seriously, well, why do they even bother making new songs if they aren't gonna put any fucking like originality into them? There's no soul to them. And also the staging of the musical numbers is really bad. The way they are staged felt like this movie should have was like meant to be like a Disney Plus original movie, not a theatrically released musical event. This movie's direction is so bland and so fucking it's so pathetic that I don't know why they chose to release this in theaters and pay a big budget to make this movie. But then I realized this movie has very lifeless direction, very boring direction. Like, this movie is not well directed. And then I realized who directed this movie: Mark Webb, who cannot seem to handle big budget movies. I mean, he did 500 Days of Summer, which is a terrific film, but then he also did the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I know those movies do have their fans, but they don't work for me. I'm one of the people who don't think they work. And then realizing it's been over 10 years since the second Amazing Spider-Man movie already. And Mark Webb is going back into like bigger budget filmmaking, and he hasn't learned a goddamn thing about directing a big budget movie. That's a big problem. And also the CGI, when it comes to the dwarves especially. Oh boy. Okay, now, like I said, there's some CGI that works, but then when it comes to the CGI and stuff like the dwarves and other things, oh man, is it bad. And I know some other reviewers were like, oh, I eventually got used to how the dwarves look. Not me. The dwarves, they started off as nightmare fuel, and they finished off as nightmare fuel. I couldn't get used to how they looked, and you shouldn't have to get used to how they look. They should have just tried harder and designed them better and made the animation better. It's that simple. Disney can put all of their effort into their animated films in terms of how they look, not the quality lately, but how they look, except for Wish. They all look immaculate. But when it comes to their live action films, especially like stuff like this and The Little Mermaid, why are these movies looking so goddamn bad? And the thing is, this movie is one of those movies that got delayed from its original release date. They had time to fix up all the effects and whatnot. Why didn't they do it? Where did that money go for some of these effects? Like, this movie has a pretty sizable budget. This movie's budget is $270 million. That's a huge budget. Fucking gigantic. Where did it go? That's a good question, because I don't know either. So yeah, despite Snow White not being the worst of the Disney live action remakes, there are far worse ones than this, like Pinocchio, The Lion King, Mulan. I I still don't think this is a good film. It's not good. It's really not good. It's got disposable throwaway characters like the bandits, who were that picture of what was supposed to be the dwarves in that one production photo. Yeah, they're in here. Forgot to mention that, but they mean so little to the plot that I almost forgot to mention them. Yeah, it's got lazy musical numbers, boring, bland, lifeless direction, a terrible performance from Gal Gadot, mixed bag CGI. But hey, Rachel Zegler isn't as bad as I thought she'd be, so there's that. And I kind of like the fact that Snow White wasn't portrayed as this girl boss badass like Rachel Zegler was kind of making her out to be in the marketing. But yeah, overall, I do not recommend Snow White. It's just another really bad Disney live action remake. No surprise here. I am going to give Snow White a very generous D+.